Yeah. Easy going. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay. Are you exhausted after after sitting there for a while?
Yeah, but I've still got one more in me,
Got
so
one more
we'll
in
be
you.
all right. We'll be all right.
Okay. I spoke to your director a week ago, actually, almost exactly a week ago.
Okay.
And we were talking about how involved you were with this whole thing, how you really kind of helped shape the character beyond what normally would happen on a picture.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess because I came on board early on, not as an actor. I came on board as a producer at the time. Um, at the time, when I read the screenplay for the first time, Alice was written older, much older than me. So I was never really approaching this project as an actor. It was always, I just fell in love with the script and wanted to get it made in some way. And Jess and I had worked together in the theatre beforehand. And so I knew her and we were friends. And she hadn't directed anything on screen at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember calling her up in floods of tears, having read the script for the first time, and saying, oh, we have to make this, and you have to direct it, because it was so apparent to me that she had this in her head completely, and she had the vision as well needed. And so then we went out for dinner to talk about that and celebrate, obviously, with some wine. And then she said, well, would you want to play Alice if I wrote it younger? And I said, well, yeah, I mean, it's a great part. And it's unlike anything I've ever had the opportunity to play yet. And so then we started working on rewriting the script. And she, well, obviously, she wrote it with me in mind, which is always great, because there's definitely some rhythmic things in the way the dialogue and things like that, which she incorporated, knowing that it was going to be me playing Alice. And then, development always takes a while, and getting a film up and running always takes a while. And it meant I was living with the thought of playing this character for a good couple of years before we actually made it. So yeah, it was a long journey.
Well, that seems to be kind of your MO these days, because you're producing and I mean, the last time I spoke to you, was for what for Tremere Drew, I think.
Oh my gosh, that was a long time ago now. There's my dog
ago.
in the background. Yeah, gosh, that was in 2010.
Dogs make a lot of cameos in interviews now.
He's off now.
We have a lot of dogs showing up these days.
He's so over me. He's so over me doing this. He hates Zoom. It's his birthday today too.
Oh, congratulations!
You know it, right? So anyway, he's off.
On TikTok, if you bring a dog into the frame, it quadruples your views or whatever. Babies and dogs.
Dogs. Yeah, babies and dogs. Oh,
so
yeah.
So back in that other time, you were 20. Now it occurs to me. I don't know why I don't think I thought about it back then. You were 23 years old.
I was so young. And I mean, I thought at the time that I knew what I was doing. I absolutely didn't. That whole period of my life, I was so young, and I look at 22-year-olds, 21-year-olds, 23-year-olds now and think, oh, God, but yeah, it was a long time ago now.
Did you make a turn intentionally, or was there a point where you went, okay, now I'm going to take a different kind of control of my career and try to find other things? Because you were in that whole series of kind of bigger, high-profile projects that were not necessarily high-minded. Some of them.
I had there was one particular film that I did where I just thought, this is not for me. It's not for me. And I actually wanted to I just wanted to stop making films after that. I thought, I just want to go back into the theatre, and because in the theatre I was having a totally different career where I was playing all these amazing characters and having great success and feeling really challenged and satisfied. And I thought, it's not happening. So after that, I set up my production company. This was back in 2013, 2012, 2013. I was thinking about that and thinking, well, I think I just want to have a bit more of a say. At the time, I was sort of auditioning or getting offered stuff, but it wasn't really the sort of stuff that I was interested in going to see myself in cinema. And my own tastes in cinema are quite. I prefer going to see independent films. I do enjoy a big budget movie every now and then, but my passion is in independent film. So it was a very, very conscious, there was a very definite moment in my life and career where I thought, no, I've got to change the way I go about things. And since then, it's been a slow build, but I've been, now I'm in a place where I'm working in a much more creative way. And I feel like I can develop things and I can work with writers and find stories that I want to tell and tell them. So that's definitely, that suits me more. Definitely. Yeah.
And you speak French.
I speak French. Yeah. I learned that in that time. I know.
Well,
who knew?
3 movies in French. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm making another one this year because in France at the moment, their film industry is up and running again. So we're making a film in September in French, which I am freaking out about a little bit because it's huge amounts of dialogue for me. But, I like a challenge.
Well, were you a high school French speaker or something? I mean, how did you end up in doing French?
No, I didn't study it at school. I was asked to do a film called Gemma Bovary, and that had French speaking in it. And I met the director, Anne Fontaine, and she asked me if I spoke any French, and I said no. But she asked me to speak French in the audition, so I just sort of prepared a phrase, and she said, "Oh, you can speak it. If you learnt it, you know how to speak it." So I went off in that time. I had about 4 or 5 months before we started shooting, and I learnt to speak French, and well, to a certain extent. And by the end of it, I was speaking French, and then I sort of learned French, and now I have French friends, and I speak French and things. But that was something I'm really proud of, actually, is that I learned French for a film and that I continued it. But yeah.
I always find Anne to be the most French of French people.
She's the most French.
So elegant.
She's so French. Yeah. I mean, she looks like an old school kind of Chanel lady, She is. It's no coincidence she made a film about Chanel.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's the most French of French.
She still has that elegance,
I've never seen her in sweatpants, I have to say. I don't think she owns any. Yeah, I think it's against her religion.
It's magnifique.
Yeah.
So, and you also went back to the theater a bit more, I think, than you were doing in those early film days, yes?
Yeah, I did. I went back and I did. Yeah, I was doing a lot more theatre in that time. It's sort of, I've never done a lot though. I usually do like a play every couple of years recently I haven't done a play for 3 years now. I'd like to do something. But I was doing a bit more theatre, did Ibsen, and I did a Duchess of Malfi. Then I did a musical, and I've done all sorts of things. But I love variety. I hate being stuck in the same old thing, and I never want to do the same as I just did. So it's so good to have theatre as well, because it always is. It's always a welcome different style of working, different muscles required. So thank goodness. Who knows when we're going to be able to do theatre again? But we'll see. That's
true. It's kind of.
I think it might be the worst casualty of the arts is the fact that we can't really get people into theatres, and we can make it, but we can't get people to come see it in the same way. We'll see.
We can't even make it here. So, so far at least, Broadway's shut down for the rest of the year, and then we actually were trying to do sports are starting up, but they're having a hard time with that too. So It's all very scary.
Bad. Yeah.
So you went against what I think a lot of people would consider your type in this movie. Is that intentional? Is that a thoughtful, or is that just a challenge that's fun to, or is it a challenge even?
It is a challenge. Yeah, it is a challenge. I think it's the sort of part that people wouldn't necessarily think to cast me in, but I think Jess knows me as a person, and she knew what I could do. And I think she wanted to give me that opportunity to show that I could do these other things. And so, obviously, you know, when you're playing someone that's vastly different to who you are, you've got to do quite a lot of work on finding the character. And I also, you know, commit to being really, really, really cantankerous, which I was a bit nervous about at first. I thought, oh God, am I going to really be able to sell that? Because I'm not like that in real life. I'm really not. I'm very bubbly and very apologetic. And but actually, when we were into it, I loved it.
Well, Jessica said she would love to have a shed overlooking a field and be there for days and then on end. Is that you also, or not so much?
No, I'm a people person. I am unlike Alice. I love being around people. I love chatting. If I was on my own in a shed, I'd end up talking to myself, to constant, just chatting away. Can't shut me up. But yeah, there are obviously times when I'd like to be alone, but I like being around people. I'm a social person.
And you're not cantankerous that way. You're not even on the inside, behind the British style.
Sometimes on the inside, I've got the beast within that's just like, on the outside, it's, excuse me, could you possibly, would you mind if I mean, it's just typical.
Well, you kind of have had this career where you've played hard-ass women.
I know. Well, I do have that. I do have a hard-ass side to me, and I am drawn to those kind of characters, I suppose. I think, playing Alice was just, and since then I've had it's interesting actually. I think Summerland was the beginning of the change in my types of characters that I was going to start playing. And since then, we shot it in 2016. I've played really quite different characters to what I usually play, and much more challenging roles, which is so brilliant. So good. I'm so pleased that I'm in that older phase now where I can finally, get my teeth into some really chunky stuff. People that have lived and had life experience and gone through some stuff and are carrying a lot of stuff. And Summerland was really sort of, I'd made a smaller film before that called The Escape, which was very deep and challenging. But I think Summerland is the first. Yeah, that I produced as well. But I don't know if anyone saw it. It was so, I'm proud of it, but it was one of those films that, who knows if anyone saw it.
I saw it yesterday.
Oh, okay.
It's on Amazon, I think, here on Amazon Prime in the US.
Okay. But yeah, so now I feel, I love it when you read a part and you think, I don't know if I can do that actually. I don't know if I've got it in me. That's what I'm looking for now.
Do you feel like you were, to some degree, it's always a weird question, but somewhat a victim of your face? The fact that your beauty became the thing that you was a signature, particularly starting with the Bond thing being such a big kind of footprint. Did that inhibit things, or are you just young woman and that was the roles that they write for one young women now?
I don't, I've been asked this question before, and it's always really weird because I really don't see myself in that way. And I think other people do, which I've never put myself in that same bracket as like the great beauties of the world, like when you see the real beauties of the world. I just don't see myself in that way. So I've always been a bit like, why? I've had it, you have to be careful when you talk about things like this because it can get taken out of context and then misquoted and then you sound like a big, massive headed person. But I've had it in auditions.
We don't cut this interview at all. So that's one of the things.
That's good. but it's been very frustrating. There's been a couple of times where I've gone up for parts and auditioned and not got them, and it's because they've said I was, too pretty for the role or something, which I just infuriates me, because I can transform and we can do things, and can you just not see? It's very, very frustrating, especially because I don't see myself in that way. So, but you're right. I mean, I did choose roles in the early part of my career that were, I guess, romantic lead type roles. And so, I did choose those roles, although I did occasionally choose roles which kind of subverted that on purpose. But yeah, I think now I took it as a great compliment when someone asked me recently, they said, did you wear prosthetics in Summerland because you look much older? And I said, no, that's just my face. And I was so pleased. I was like, thankfully, we wanted my character to look sort of a bit kind of like weather worn and scruffy and blown out. And she lives by the beach, so she'd have kind of craggy skin. And I just was so pleased that somebody recognized that. Yeah, it's an awkward question, because obviously, I just don't see myself in that way. But yeah,
well, it's an odd conundrum, because even in this film, it's funny, as I'm watching it, I'm thinking all that happened on your face, and they were clearly aging you a little bit and taking away things and not wearing so much makeup or whatever, and you still have the bone structure in your face is undeniable. I mean, it's just, and I think the idea of thinking of you as a 60-year-old and your future self is interesting, actually, watching the movie, because the idea of how people transform and our perception of them transforms is always interesting. But it's kind of hard to get away from your face.
God. Well, yeah, I agree with you that I love watching people aging. When you've watched these actresses over the years aging beautifully, and you see them playing all different sorts of roles, and how that changes. I look forward to that with me. And I feel like I'm already starting to feel the benefits of playing older women and women that have, I've been waiting for that for a long time.
It can be, you've worked through the whole thing. That's a lot of women seem to have to stop for 10 years or so. Their careers kind of just stop, and then they become a mother or whatever. They become that idea of what, the film business sees them as. But you've kind of had a nice career through all of that and found interesting things to do as well. And now as you're getting to be in your 30s, you're,
Yeah, but I also think that it's changed. The film industry's changed, and the perception of, women has changed, and the stories that are being told have changed in the last 5 years. And, now there's more stories for older actresses, and there are just more stories in general about women. So there's more opportunity, and you don't always have to be the young love interest. You can do something else now, which is so great.
When Jessica was saying that you guys are now working on a super secret project together, and that opportunity is something that's, I think, changed in the last 5 or 10 years also, is that, the idea of people developing things on an independent side, women and everybody else, that's actually a legitimate business.
Yes, and it's not like you're working in vain and it's not going to get looked at, because where we're at with that is it's totally our thing. It's not with anyone at the moment, doesn't belong to anyone but us. So I'm excited that it might actually stand a chance of getting seen and made and bought and all of that stuff. It's just so different now and it's been amazing to watch Jess's career develop, because obviously she started as a playwright. Well, she started as a director in theatre, then became a playwright, and now is going into film, and she has a plethora of screenplays that are being made. And how the opportunities just keep coming for her, which is indicative of the attitude towards female filmmakers at the moment, which is great.
So as an actor on a picture like this, how much research do you do? Are you a big kind of figuring out the history of the person and the period and all that kind of stuff? Actor,
yeah.
Or you kind of go?
Script first. I always go off the script first and then fill in the gaps myself. as much as I need to. I think back in the day when I was a drama school graduate and eager and bushy-tailed, I would do everything possible to, but I think as time's gone on, I've realized that certain things I need, certain things don't need other things. I felt like with Summerland, even though it's set during the Second World War, I didn't feel like it was a huge part of the film, the Second World War, that was something I needed to research much. Most of my research was in writers at that time and folklore and what it was like to be a woman at university in the 1920s and all of those sorts of things. And I always do a backstory for all of my characters. Actually, I keep all of that stuff, and I recently found one that I did, like a really sweet, worthy. It was for a film that was so wishy-washy and not very good. But I'd done so much character work, trying to kind of build it up in some way. And actually, when it's a good part, it's there, a lot of it. But yeah, I always fill in the gaps. And I guess with Summerland, you needed to know why she was the way she was. And we have, glimpses into her past, and she kind of talks about her childhood and stuff. But it's really fun to do that. I really like doing that. And then you forget it all when you're on set. Then you just go, oh yeah. I'm just. And
is it the moments on set that you live for, or is it the whole process? Is it where are you most at home? Where are you happiest in the process?
Oh, I love it when you're really into a scene on set and it's just going on, that you're not really sure what's happening. That's what you really aim for as an actor, is to kind of let go and transcend a bit and forget what you're doing when you're really absorbed. And then they shout cut, and then you just work it out with the director and the actors what needs working out. And I love all of that. And it's sort of, I feel like the recent stuff that I've done, I just did something called Black Narcissus, which I was very, very involved in, and it was just a great feeling on set of just collaboration and being really, really connected to everybody, and that's what I really love the most. And problem solving and just working it out. I love all of that.
So in theater, you're a rehearsal addict?
The rehearsal is my favorite time. I'm not that into the other stuff, but I love rehearsing. Yeah, I love rehearsing. I think that's my happiest, actually, is in rehearsal, in theatre.
Yeah, it's always amazing that people are able to do these long runs and keep their sanity.
Yeah, I struggle with that, actually. I my perfect theatre job would be, a couple of months maximum, but a really long rehearsal period.
You're waiting for Mike Lee to come around, I think.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah, I'd love that.
So do they do that in the UK? Because on Broadway for the last 10 years or so, they have these limited run shows where somebody with some fame comes in and they set it for 100 shows or 250 shows, and that's it. Is that happening in the West End?
I think in the West End, it's generally, if it's in the West End, it's usually minimum 3-month run.
Right.
If you're doing something maybe on one of the off West Ends, then you might do an 8-week run, but with the idea of it transferring or going somewhere else. So it usually is quite a chunk. Yeah. Yeah. So that's always a consideration for me, because I'm not very good at the long runs. I get bored. Unless it's a really interesting play. I was talking about this earlier. When I've done some Ibsen, and for me, that's my, I love it. I love Ibsen. I don't think you can ever quite get to grips with it, especially his later stuff that's quite surreal. Then you're always finding new stuff every single time you do it. And that's what's interesting to me, is that you're always discovering. When I find it tedious is when it gets, you're just regurgitating, or it just becomes a bit boring. But when it's a really great play that's maybe a little bit meta, you can always find something. to do.
I always remember the conversation with Jake Gyllenhaal about some of the theater he was doing in New York, and how, and particularly one show, they'd been on for 4 months or whatever it was, and he said like the last week he finally figured out what the show was about. But
Yeah,
it took all that time of doing it on stage to figure it out.
Yeah, that happens. Or even in the last week, that's when you really start enjoying it for some weird reason. It's very strange, and it's very different for each play as well. There was a play I did, Duchess of Malfi, where I couldn't actually. That was a short run. I think it was only 6 weeks, and I was grateful because there was no way that I could keep it up for longer. It was so draining. I thought, I know actresses have done it for 3 months or 6 months or whatever. I don't know how, because the whole play is about a character being tortured emotionally all the way through. By the end of it, she dies, and she's so glad to die. She's ready. She's like, just kill me now. Yeah. Because that's how I felt every day. At the end of it, it's like, please let this be over. Yeah.
So is that kind of pain satisfying to you?
Yeah, it's a bit weird.
No,
it's a little bit weird.
You know, if that's the muscle you're trying to exercise.
Yeah, and you know what, I would
exercise is great.
I wanted to go back and do that part again, because I felt like I was too young when I played it originally, and I'd like to do it again maybe even like in a couple of years. And even if, I think you really need to know what it's like to have children. You have to play that part. I'd like to play it knowing what it's like to have children, because she loses both of her children in that. That's to get the real depths of despair. Sure. Get really sadistic on it. But yeah, there is something really satisfying about knowing when you've kind of gone somewhere and you've gone further than you thought you could go. There's something like, wow, there's something satisfying about that, even if it's hard. And
one of my strongest memories of being a father for the first year was thinking how many different ways my child could die. Because I think every day I was like, got to protect him from this, got to protect him from that. And it's the mindset. People say you don't know until you have a kid. Yeah. And then you find out they're right. Because it's.
Yeah. Oh, I can't imagine young person,
you don't really think about it that way so much.
Yeah. I can't. No one obviously not. That's something. Oh, I just probably would be like that as well. I think oh my God, every time they step into another room, oh my God, don't do this. Be careful. Be that person.
So now you're producing, and and even in this case, you don't have a credit, but you're hands-on in this show. Are you involved in editing? Are you interested in editing? Is that a different perspective that you're learning about?
I think when I'm in it, I can't bear it. I find it very difficult to watch myself on screen. So I find it very hard, I think, to be honest and see. I know a lot of actors like Jake Gyllenhaal is very good at going into the edit and being able to be very clinical and say, oh, that one didn't work, that one did. I'm too invested, I can't do it, and I nitpick too much. I think I've been in the edit on stuff that I haven't been in, which is I've really enjoyed, but I think when it's me, it's not helpful. It's not helpful for anyone for me to be there. Yeah, I on this one, I was executive producer on it, and so I was much more involved in the sort of fun stuff like casting and getting the project off the ground in the first place, and the creative stuff like where we should shoot it and who should shoot it and who should be the DP and all of that stuff. That's all the stuff that I really love about producing. It's like constructing the team that's going to make it.
So are you as precise about picking a DP, for instance, or
yeah,
as you are about your acting?
Yeah, I love all of that stuff, and I love learning about DPs and production designers, and I know all of the HODs, and yeah, and I think it's so important. DP for me is, as an actor, it's the second, aside from the actors and the directors, the most important person on the set. So it's always a conversation that I have now as an actor going on something is who's the DP, and and obviously they are magicians. I mean, they are, when you watch a film that takes your breath away, it's often because it's shot in the most incredible way, and its DPs are, they're just integral to the filmmaking process. They are the filmmaking process. So yeah, I'm always very vocal about that. And on Summerland, we got Laurie Rose to shoot it, who shot The Escape. And I worked really closely with him on The Escape and had a really amazing relationship with him. So I was so pleased that he shot Summerland. It's also like much more sort of, The Escape was very, very steady, very handheld and very, very close up, whereas this has got, it's got a huge breath of fresh air in it. So it's great for Laurie to do that as well. It's a change of tone for him. But yeah, I love all of that stuff.
The Escape may be the single most horrifying look at marital sex in the history of cinema.
I know.
I mean, it is painful to watch those sequences in the first half in particular. It's just brutal.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
Well,
it was.
Did you worry about that level? Like, how far should we go? Or is this just, that's the emotion? Because, I mean, clearly that's what she's feeling.
It just happened that way. We weren't even supposed to shoot those scenes. It was on the first day. I mean, that film was improvised, so we didn't really know what we were going to do each day. We sort of had an idea of what we wanted to get. And that day, Dominic Cooper and I had worked together before and we're friends. So there was like, we trusted each other completely. And so I remember the director, Dominic Savage, saying, let's just start in the bedroom. Like, let's just do some scenes, then waking up and getting ready for work and all of that. And then it just sort of happened that way. That scene was shot. And I don't think Dominic Cooper kind of knew what was going on with me.
Right.
So
you're really over his shoulder the whole time. But I think
he doesn't,
sequences of it.
He doesn't notice. Well, actually, we really wanted him to say this line, something like, he sees that she's been crying or something, and he says, did you really enjoy it? Like, was it that good? It's like, no, I fucking hated it, actually. But she doesn't say that, obviously.
Yeah. Well, the tear
just to show how
on the side of her cheek is just tough.
Yeah, but yeah, happens.
Well, men should see that movie and understand what happens in relationships, not just relationships, and a lot of, I think, men's understanding of what women are going through while they're doing whatever they're doing is it would be an instructive film in that regard for people. I know it's not meant to be an instructive film necessarily, but emotionally
I
it's
know.
very powerful.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I know that it's been used. I've heard that it's been used in like therapy sessions. People that are going through problems or women that are suffering with depression in marriage and especially in relation to children and things like that. But it wasn't intended to be used in that way. But I guess anything that shows that other people are going through other things that is helpful, and I guess that's what we wanted. That was the intention of the film, was to say, look, this is sometimes happens in life, and here you go. Like,
and he's not evil. You guys, you're fair to him. I think he's doing okay.
Yeah, I think they're just, we always wanted it to be that they're just disconnected now. Yeah. It's just, that's what happens in some relationships. You get together and you're in love at some point, and then life happens, and something's not there anymore for them, and then they should end. It should end. And how sad that is, and how it's so sad that people can live together and be so close, and yet they have no idea what's going on in the other person, or not know how to reach them. I think that's I know a lot of people have been watching it during lockdown, which I feel sorry for them that they like, it's not the easiest watch.
Yeah.
But I guess, it's, I guess there's been a lot of people breaking up during lockdown as well, and having problems with their relationships and being confronted with things. So
it's a lot of time together.
Yeah.
So is directing calling you at all, or are you?
Yeah, I mean, oh God, I'd love to do it at some point. I think I'll know when the right thing comes along to direct. And who knows, it could be something that's more improvised and a little bit freer. But I do love working with text and actors. But I think I need to be in love with the story, because I've seen how much commitment it takes from start to finish to direct a film. And you really got to believe in it. And if it doesn't work out, if it's, you've got to still stick with it. With an actor, you can just go, I'm not doing press for that. As a director, you kind of got to. So I think I'd want to make sure it's something that I'm really fully invested in and believe in. But I think it is something on the cards in the next while, in the next few years, maybe. But we'll see, because the story hasn't come up yet that I want to tell.
Well, the funny thing is, still, when I last saw you were 23, now you're 33. You're still quite young.
34.
34. Oh, you're aging now badly.
I'm aging.
But I mean, you're still really a kid. I mean, you're still very young in the business, in the world, in life. You're in the first third of you're ending the first third of your life, theoretically.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot to go. Do you look to the future? Do you think about being the Grand Dame 30 years from now, or are you just kind of chugging along?
No. Oh, I just chug along. I can't. I've never been like that. I've never been sort of a planner, or in the next 5 years this is what I want to do, or this is what I want to achieve. I'm just too vague. I'm much too vague. And I also quite like not knowing what's going to come up, and being open to that, and being surprised. All I do know is that I definitely want to continue acting, and I definitely want to direct. And that's all I know, really. I'd love to be still going when I'm really old lady. Love that.
And do you take things from each of the projects? Do you take the idea of how, this director, or that you've worked with a lot of great directors, some in better projects, some in worse projects, but you're some very experienced high-end directors. Do you take from them, or is it kind of like the overall just all becomes part of the story of your memory?
Yeah. Everyone is so different in their approach to directing. Everyone is so different. And I think that's the key. I think you have to find your own style. I think for me, what I'd want to do, I know that where I'd want to put my time as a director. I think I know I would like to work with the actors in a very close way. But yeah, I it's not like I've worked with a specific director and thought, oh, that's really good. I am definitely going to do that. And I think you have to adapt with each project as well. I think really good directors are really good at adapting, and they have to be able to adapt with the actor as well, and the different demands on set. You've got to be so receptive, and I think the really good ones do that. So I don't think a certain way of directing would appeal to me, but yeah, obviously I'm sort of soaking things up, like definitely not what not to do.
Yeah. Well,
don't dictate.
Don't give you line reading.
Don't tell people. Don't give a line reading. Oh yes, don't give a line reading. It's the worst thing ever. Yeah,
it's funny because I run it like Kate Winslet, who was started very young, and you're very young when you kind of broke out, and it's interesting. There seem to be these very mature careers, and then you realize the person is 35 or 34, and that they really their whole career ahead of them. They have a whole 30 years of performance at least in front of them, and it's kind of a fascinating moment. Because you forget how young you are, you forget how young Kate is, or what has been. I guess she's still young. Not quite. She is.
She's still young.
But she was such a kid when she started that it's.
I know.
It's an interesting element.
Yeah, I know. Yes, there's still a lot to do, and that's exciting. I've always thought I'd be a better actress when I was older, to be honest. So hopefully that will that will become apparent. Hopefully that prophecy or hope will come true.
Well, we're off to a good start with your torn down performance in Summerland.
Thank you.
It's begun.
It's begun.
The old aging of Gemma Arterton. Thank you for your time. Glad to finally let you get off the phone.
Oh, thank you.
You can go relax or do whatever you're going to do.
I'm going to have a glass of wine. That's what
I'm
going to
do. There you go. Staring at a screen all day is a lot of work.
Oh, it's fine. It's been a real pleasure. It has been
lovely. Speaking to you again.
And you. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Yeah. All the best. Bye.